What a fantastic piece of work, Adrian. Everything about this is so great. You put so much energy into this. The mock up sounds fantastic. The scoring has so much attention to detail. I'll try to point out some particular little aspects, but you really have been thinking a lot about the musician's perspective throughout this whole score, and kind of seeing your arc as an emerging pro orchestrator. It's just everything that you have brought in this piece, brought to the table for the everybody else in the challenge. I think it just really means a lot, and means a lot to me. So so thank you so much. And I just wanted to express that before I bring out all the nitpicking, which I'm going to. Probably starting as I am with section E, and then working back to D, and then A through C, as I've been doing these, in case you have been away from our last run of evaluations. Anybody out there watching? So, I just feel that this kind of the timing of this was not quite, just kind of didn't quite convince me. Like the fermata just didn't feel long enough. And I would just say in general, the tempos felt really slow at the climax at D. There were things in the score anyway, and most performers on piano start to push and push and push at the tempo, till finally, it's just really going nuts at D. So maybe that was a detail that you felt like was something you wanted to leave out of your score. Maybe it was something that you forgot to put in. I don't know. But let's, I would say that one of the hardest things to pull off in a fade out is a trill, right? Because the trill has the furious activity, right? The yeah 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 yeah, and to kind of go from yeah 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 yeah, yeah, it just really calls a lot of attention to itself when everybody in the entire orchestra is fading down to nothing, right? The focus of the audience, I feel, or the listener, should be on the fade rather than the trill above, right? So I'm just saying you're risking that that proportion, right? Maybe sacrificing one proportion for another. But I would definitely make this a longer fermata. If you're going to if you're planning on going back and tweaking the playback and so on, I would definitely make it longer. And because I would really want the audience to be able to hear the fade out, so that these elements here were standing out as things faded, right? So I think you absolutely are in your right to bring everybody down to pianissimo. See, the way that you have marked your dynamics here in the fade are working against the whole effect of what Barvinsky was trying to do, right? He hits this chord in the piano part right at the decrescendo, and then he sort of singles out he's going to be holding some as he lets the piano decay, and he lets go of the pedal, right? So you just have the sound of those things remaining behind. However, if this is just fading down to piano, right, the winds and the trombones of all, the most forceful brass instrument of all, are just fading down to piano, then and this is pianissimo, then the remaining pianissimo will not have as much of an impact, being left over after the fade. So it really is, it's kind of everything is the opposite. The middle strings here should fade down to piano. Everybody else should fade down to pianissimo, and maybe even the brass should fade down to triple P, right? Just really, really just bring everything down to the finest fine point, and then the middle strings are still playing, and then they fade, right? I think that might be a better strategy. And I'm just going to check on something really quick. I'm just having the darndest time remembering to set up my criteria evaluation screens. Okay, so in the original score, the held Bs last all the way through, right? And they don't really decay in the piano part completely until the end of the next bar. So what if you just kept it at piano and let it continue at piano and then started a fade about halfway through this bar, or maybe just from the beginning of the bar down to triple P. And then like the fade would just fade into the consciousness of the listener who is focusing on the little solo parts emerging, right? All right. So yeah, solo, bum, 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 and I think this is a really good strategy to take. It's like mezzo forte with tuba way, way, way down there, right? I mean, yeah, of course, tuba can play very softly down there as well, but it's not as it doesn't have as much directness, and it's perhaps a little less convincing musically, you know, and especially as a solo, right? I'd rather start my tuba solo a little louder. Um, you know, Starting just way down to that rock bottom E, right? And then bass clarinet comes in, do 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 ba da ba dum. The handoff is cool from tuba to bass clarinet. That all works fine for me. And then like you have I really love the way you made the harmony slightly complex here, right? And then you had your octave melody, ba da dum, and in a different color than the bass clarinet, right? You didn't go to clarinets with this. You had oboe and English horn. Yeah, with the clarinets and flutes providing that really beautiful, haunting harmony with a little bit of French horn below, right? Yeah, and then you had a contrast in strings. Now you are directly transcribing the tenuto articulations, and I mean, do you just really want that? Dun, 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 you just really want the just like completely square blocky notes in a row, or would you perhaps want like maybe a portato, like so that it's kind of the notes is pulsating, or do you know what I mean? Just because here you go for portato, but here you just have zoom, 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 or zoom, zoom, zoom accent, all right? So it's just a little, it's a little unclear. This is one of those situations where a conductor might be tempted to just like put it in, just say, oh, like doing a little pencil work at the beginning. Hey, tuba, from E and bass clarinet bar after E, and then the violas and cellos 5 bars after E. Could you put in slurred, make that portato on the first half of the bar? Thank you, right? And then I just like absolutely here, right? It would make total sense with the horn and the tuba, just to keep that from just to punching too much. Make it more throbbing, if you know what I mean. Yeah. Yeah, is there some way of like after this beautiful color in here, just a wonderful combination, is there some way of making this also a bit more, like also having something exaggerated about its color? Maybe you could go to tremolo here, right? Right, as a kind of a contrast to the just beautiful extreme color in there. Yeah, and then octave horns, you can't miss. And then this, once again, possibly portato. Da, da, and then bum, 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 da, da. I totally could hear the implied leap, even if you didn't intend it. But it worked really, really great. And yeah, this is just really a lovely combination scoring right in here. Flutes and and just the rest of the winds more or less combining with the strings. It was just really nicely done, really great color. And then here, a little bit of tremolo on those E's above. I thought was really great. I think it should fade out though, rather than just stop. Da 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 da. Yeah. What's the dynamic here? I think you should restate it, right? And you left off marking piano here, right? Because it'll just think that, like, in your mock-up, it might think that it's still at mezzo piano or whatever. So I mean, if that's an intentional thing, you should write it in. Otherwise, I would just say give everybody the piano marking here. Yeah, piano espressivo, really. Yeah, just really, really gorgeous the way that was scored. Yeah, and I think that, like, if you're, yeah, it's another thing too is, I mean, I see how you did the handoff here, but I would still fade out your clarinet family right in here as the double reeds start to take over. Yeah, all right. Now I was just wondering one little thing: is the piccolo slightly too much here? I'm just adding just because you already got just gorgeous color here, a wonderful mixture of colors, and then a nice exposed wind chorale right in here, and then we have this very very high piccolo in octaves with first flute. This just felt a little too much to me, but I mean, if it works for you, don't change it. But yeah, that was one part where I was a little, I just felt it was almost like, yeah, Barvinsky has already scored this, in the middle of the concert treble staff, right? And here we got it 2 octaves higher. But I mean, the with the approach that you're taking, it helps to spread things out, doesn't it? One little possible thing that I would mention is fade ins and fade outs, right? Like if you were going between two instruments that are from the same family, then you don't have to worry about that when you dovetail, right? Because the character will be similar enough to where the change, like there won't be a perceived change of timbre all that much. It'll just feel like, oh, kind of the same voice going to a new register. But when you have a situation where you're going between extremes, right? Like if you're going directly from English horn to bassoon, same thing, right? As going from oboe to English horn. You don't really need any kind of massaging of it, right? But here, I would say I would fade out on the B, and I would fade in on the written B, I should say, and I would fade in on this this written F sharp here, right? Just they're both of them being sounding E, right? So yeah, just a kind of I mean, you're already taking pains to dovetail, right? So you want a kind of a unified sound working its way all the way down. Okay, but the difference in timbre you can hear in the mock-up, right? And it'll be the same thing. Like the players can kind of hear how things are working, and they can just sort of do it themselves. But you can help them by just like maybe having a fade in. Maybe like in the final score, just stretch this out a little bit. Give yourself more space so that the fade in, the fade out have plenty of room in the engraving. And I would also do that in the part. Just make the justification wider on those. Just have fewer bars per system in the part in the instrument part. So just like fade out on the sounding E in the English horn and fade in on the sounding E in the bass clarinet, and then just do the same trick. This is already fading out, so that's cool, but then fade in a little bit at the beginning here. And that might seem completely fussy, but it actually will make everything tie together, and you're going very soft and slow anyways at the end, right? So it's not such a big deal. And then I love this right in here, just the use of the contrabassoon and the doubling of it to keep it from being too gravelly, right? And the string scoring here was beautiful, right? That was great. So yeah, so awesome ending. Now let's jump back to the beginning of section D. And just like before, here is, like I said before, here's where I'm probably gonna, start talking about tempo more. I mean, I just really feel that you missed some potential excitement here by not, maybe diminuendo a little, but come back to, a tempo, a poco più. I mean, just, you know, I think that the urgency is lacking, right? Because it's, there's something, it's almost as if like, um, like under the veneer, you know, under the calm veneer, there's a restlessness, and the restlessness is building, and it's building, right? So we're along with the build, we're not really getting any kind of momentum increasing, right? Okay, but let's just judge everything in terms of the evaluation criteria, starting with the cascading octaves. And this is something I felt you did really, really well. However, I mean, you know very well, right, that the celesta really can't contribute very much if things get too loud, right? So like you are, you're keeping things at bay as much as you possibly can, even though the heavy brass really are going to have a lot of brightness here, and the focus is really going to be on them more than any other element, right? So so yeah, celesta. I mean, it's better to have it than to not have it, right? But yeah, and we can have sempre crescendo and so on and so forth. But it really, like, by the time we get to here, like if you're saying sempre crescendo to forte, I mean, this was in the piano part, and I just really prefer, poco a poco crescendo. I think, it's basically what's intended here, right? I think a sempre crescendo almost has a kind of a, you know, urgent, more than urgent kind of a feel to that marking to me. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, always crescendo. You're just going to get more and more and more and more, buddy. And I feel that, like, in a way, it's kind of an indication of Barvinsky's youthful spirit, right? Because, like, eventually we end up here with fortissimo, right? So it's all, his idea of sempre crescendo really is covering, like, the whole beginning of the passage of D, not just the first 8 or 7 bars. It's more than that. It just keeps going on for another 4 bars, and then you've hit the peak, right? So, the problem is, like, how sempre is the crescendo? Will your brass players be at mezzo forte by the time you get to here? In which case, all of your vibraphone and celesta stuff kind of goes out the window a little too soon, right? And not to mention harp. Yeah, it's kind of interesting the way you're sort of avoiding repeating notes and so on. I'm not sure how much that is really an issue, but sure, why not? Throw it in. If it works, it's better to use it than to not use it. Yeah, so I mean, I think that your plan is a good one. I'm just worried about the pressure from all the other elements around it, right? Which will kind of blow it out of the water a little bit. And which at the same time, you're not using your piccolo at all until much later, right? All right, but good connection, flute going through to clarinets, and then picking up here in the cellos, and yeah, you're a little light on the lower octaves, right? You just have one bassoon and one cello, and just at the beginning that's enough. But then as you start to increase force, especially in the lower brass, then this is going to need more and more support, right? And not just going crescendo up to forte, but thickening of the function itself, right? In order to keep it from getting blown out. Right? But I think it's cool that you are bringing in other like more middle wind type ideas right in here with your oboe and English horn and so on. So that is our that is the cascading octaves up to here, right? And then I'll discuss as we go. I'm going to do this section by section. Right, and then this is very very cool too. Is like getting to the end of the melody and then fading out. I thought that was very strong in first flute and so on. Now, heavy brass. You have this little chorale here with the bass trombone and everybody else except for third trumpet, which comes in a little later. This was lovely. I liked this a lot. Tuba and your contrabassoon working together, right? No double bass, but it's fine. It's fine. You're just getting a particular tone color, and just as long as the players keep it soft, the tuba will temper the sound of the contrabassoon. So maybe like I would put these two parts on separate staves, and I would give the tuba the same dynamic phrasing as your contrabassoon. Seriously, just have them play identically down there. Just I think that it's that way you can give the player the mark of forte when you get to here. But try to do separate staves on bass trombone and tuba. I just see so many places where it's just way better to have them in different places. And as far as vertical pressure is concerned on an orchestration challenge entry, you can see that there's plenty of space, right? So there's room for another staff in here. You just make sure that the margins, you can leave, like if you look at some of the other entries that I've evaluated, especially ones that I've formatted myself from Sibelius scores, you'll see that I leave very small margins from time to time, right? Okay, and just a little bit of snare drum. It's kind of nice, sort of just amping up, slightly military feeling, push from the suspended cymbal, along with this run up here with the to the trills, and so on by your flute family, piccolo, oboe family, big glissando when the harp. And I thought it was kind of cool that you didn't feel the necessity for the strings to join in on that, right? You have a lot of rushing up here, right? It's a sort of it's like a finger pointing at the downbeat of the next bar, right? So how many of those fingers can you put in? So by adding some variety, I think this is actually the biggest sweep, right? And then you have these other ones, but they don't have as much punch, right? This is the biggest, punchiest one. But it's all the same. It's pretty cool because you're changing the context of everything. So all right, so let's go back to how everything sort of fits together. I think it works pretty well. I'm just worried about I almost feel like the glockenspiel / vibraphone could come in a little earlier. I don't know, maybe. Yeah. And just poco crescendo, not sempre crescendo. I think with sempre crescendo, you're going to get a faster crescendo, and you don't need that with the way that you have marked out your cascades. And I think you could bring piccolo in too a little earlier as a support to some of this. Anyway, but to continue on from this point. Yeah, so here we're getting very big and Ravellian in a way. And like here you're going to A2, A2A, bassoons, right? And contrabassoons helping out and so on. I mean, this is still like the simulation of the sustain pedal here. Yeah, that is still has a useful kind of a contribution. I'm just wondering if there could have been some support somewhere. just to thicken this up slightly, just because this is so monumental. Just the way that you've scored everything. I think this is really cool. This color coming in real hot, but maybe kind of fading out if you're going to go to, if it's just going to, like, the focus is going to remain on the brass this time with the horns attached, right? Rather than just dropping off. Maybe just to fade into the color of the brass might make it feel more seamless. And I don't think there's any need for your horns to be softer than your heavy brass. They will definitely get just sucked right into the color and not really make a huge contribution, right? I don't think you need to go diminuendo to mezzo forte here. All right. Yeah. All right. So, and now we get to all this furious scoring, and just even like a stronger argument for there to be some kind of I cannot imagine Violina Petrochenko playing this section at the same tempo as the beginning of the 12/8, right? I think that we would lose a lot of excitement, and I think that that's possibly also the case here. I mean, what you've scored is incredibly exciting. Don't get me wrong, but I think like the emotional meaning is getting lost a little bit in the slower tempo. And then just have this rip up here in sixths in your violins, and that makes a whole lot of sense with the way that you've scored your winds. So, all right. You've got this massive melody scored out over 3 octaves in your strings, except for double basses. And like, while some of the pitches that are happening in your wind parts line up with it occasionally, and you've got this lower stuff going on here, C trumpets and so on, the harmonized version, and the color and strength of the overtones feeding into the octaves, which is a beautiful effect. I really love it. I would say on the actual pitches, these high pitches here, especially like first violin, there just really isn't a lot of support. Right here, you do this big rip up with the clarinets, and then you throw in a little bit of this. Kind of, maybe you were experimenting with it or something, and then there's nothing. Right? I mean, couldn't we have had? I mean, I think that these pitches are pretty playable on clarinet, right? I mean, just imagine how it would sound with 2 clarinets screaming away up there. Right, on I guess what to them would be like written A, or or G double sharp if you want to match up with the insanity of the key signature here. Yeah. So this really should be F double sharp in your C trumpet right here. Just stick with what is scored in the other parts. Okay, it just makes it simpler. And this was a nice compromise here to kind of fool the ear into, like, if you're going to unison trumpets right here, the force of the overtones helping to create the illusion of rushing up to the very highest C sharp there. Yeah. But, of course, you've sacrificed the ability to score high support for winds, very high, except for the clarinets, right? The clarinets can definitely cover the same line as the first violins, or even just one clarinet could do that. Yeah, I just feel it needs a little bit more support at the top there. I mean, the trumpet overtones will do some of the work, but not all of it. If there's one thing to sort of critique about this, is that, like, the kind of hammering sound of the piano is pretty absent because you've chosen to do everything slurred, right? Which I thought was it's a nice variation, right? But like how would it sound if you had amped it up to a higher speed? I think that you just get this beautiful riotous kind of a color. So like, and speaking of riots, this is really gorgeous what you're doing up here, but should it go on for 11 bars? Right? Is there something that you could be doing just overall to, to gradually kind of progress the texture and the approaches of all of the instruments around, right? Could the contrabassoon be contributing a little bit more to the bottom end here? Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I ask, I mean, of course, like these are going to hammer away, but like with your strongest instruments, your trombones playing slurs over almost everything, and, not to mention the bassoons, right? This just and this is all fluttering around. The hammering away of your double reeds here isn't really making much of an impact, right? You could mark accents on all of them, I guess, but it still wouldn't, in against your forte trumpets, it's not really going to stand out too much. Now, having said all of that, there's pretty nice balance. I mean, except for like the highest pitch of the highest line of the first violins, as I mentioned before. So it's nice. But like, what instrument could contribute to a more kind of like helping out the oboes and English horn with a hammering quality? Is there any gap here that isn't being used, I wonder? That some instrument that could have gone chunk, 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 chunk and given it more of a slightly brutal character. I will let you figure that one out. Here, the glockenspiel doesn't really do a whole lot, right? You can kind of hear, right? Like here, you're kind of using it to substitute for like the fact that you are dropping out the octave here. But I think even more essential would be some support by an upper wind player. And so progressing texture and function of the upper winds there, is there something they could be doing that would like move us forward to ever more exciting kinds of riotous activity? Yeah. See, like here is where I feel like ba 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 bum, and then you come back with the riot on top. Like, do we need it at this point? Because it's really like in the piano part, it's really about chonk 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 chonk. That sort of like kind of primal, rite of spring kind of repeated chords. Yeah, so is this maybe a distraction from the way that the function is leading us to the whole trick of letting go of the pedal and the remaining octaves and everything else that is in the piano score? Maybe if you changed, if you make some kind of progression here, evolution of what's going on here, it can wrap up when you get to here, and then the focus can be more in the middle of the orchestra. Anyway, so I mean, those were the thoughts that occurred to me as I looked at this. But yeah, I mean, you're just giving me so much to talk about. It's so fun. There's nothing left to do but look at the beginning of this lovely score. Let's take a look at that now. And so my first comment here at the beginning is that I kind of don't. Yeah, I mean, okay. I mean, I see what you're doing here. You're like saying piano subito, just kind of jumping back to it again and again. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not so sure, Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Yeah, I mean, I guess it works. It's a little fussy, okay, but there's a lot about just the natural nuance and the natural way that notes are held and released in winds and strings that just kind of already do what you're asking, is kind of what I would comment. However, I really love the use of the French horn to just to play, just like you're kind of giving to just French horn and cello the responsibility of playing that extended note, right, as the rest of the orchestra continues on, goes upon its merry way. Um, yeah, and the dynamics work pretty good, and that little clang here on the chimes, and yeah, this like what we're hearing here, the harp, sort of playing these octaves here. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, that will come through with the way that you've scored everything else. And I like how you add the color from the winds. This could almost be a place where you could insinuate the new color, right? Like so, you're saying piano subito, but what if the the winds came in at pianissimo with a hairpin, right? So that they sort of grow and then fade out again, and then they're piano subito with the rest of the strings. It might be kind of an interesting way of like working in the wind, the color of the winds without just making it such a sudden, such a sudden contrast. Now, here's like a little bit of there's a little bit of craft that Adrian is looking out for. Notice, like with this triple octave here, just how easy it is for the harpist to play the E in the middle with their right hand, and then play the A octave on the outside, and then reverse that, play the E octave with the left hand, and play the single A note in the middle, right? So just that's the kind of of course that would also work on piano as well. Just imagine playing this on piano and not being able to use your pinky fingers. Right, that would be closer to what it would be like for a harp. But if you're going to go all out with that kind of level of craft, Adrian, then wouldn't you possibly want to score this like maybe with the stems down here, like for the left hand, stems up for the right hand, and so on? And then split this between two hands, maybe both in treble clef, in different staves. I mean, there's a lot you could do still. If you're going to finesse it like this, then maybe you can finesse it like that. The least convincing part about this screen to me was the side drum. I mean, I kind of felt it was it was a little bit of an intrusion to like all of the beautiful scoring that you're doing and just the lush textures and everything else. Well, I mean, perhaps that's what you want, right? Maybe you want like sort of thinking, Ukraine is like kind of always under threat of some kind of horrible conflict, and just like there's such a tragic history to that beautiful country, and like some other beautiful places in the world that have suffered the same thing. So maybe that is what you're saying here, but I mean, just like this just made me hard. It made me feel like it was harder to concentrate on the other things that were going on when this tattoo was happening. So I mean, but that could be intentional. Now, as far as like my the evaluation criteria. You were absolutely doing those things that I have a concern about. You are progressing the emotional and timbral character of the melody and the accompaniment and so on. So it's just really nice. And the way it shifts to winds, and then then you're adding on some trombones and the horns and everything, taking a more active role, and just really gradually adding that color. And this is kind of fun, the way that you go to a forte and then drop to a mezzo forte. So I see, like it's really unclear here whether you are going forte diminuendo to mezzo forte for both players, and I'm almost tempted, like, for you to throw in like a tie, a half note value tied to a quarter note tied to a dotted half note here, just to be really, really clear that this is intended for both parts, right? The forte is diminishing in the first part down to mezzo forte for its tied note, and then it's also mezzo forte diminuendo for both parts from that point on. I think it just would be a clearer way to score two-part writing right here. But, notice some other people who have heard me yak about this, perhaps too much, that Adrian does not import the what's happening in the piano score into his score. This is a dotted whole note, right? In all of these full held notes in this bar, right? Rather than dotted half tied to dotted half, which was just a part of the function of the piano playing, and really should have no bearing on an orchestral transcription. Yeah, so pretty nice in here. I just really love this blazing E note here, and then the way you just temper it and then bring it back down. Here you got a pianissimo stacked on top of a piano marking. I think everybody should go down to pianissimo here. I'm just not really sure how this would work out, but yeah. But all parts going down to pianissimo in the brass, and the piano in the winds and strings. That is absolutely perfect. That's beautiful. Why does the timpani roll have to start at mezzo forte? Why couldn't you roll from a piano or pianissimo up to mezzo forte and then come back down to piano? This fermata can last as long as you want to. You're the orchestrator. You're the big cheese, right? So you can make it, if you want to. I just feel like the side drum right here, which I don't know if people are aware of what a side drum is. I'm sure Adrian knows, but a side drum is like it's got a much deeper shell than a standard snare drum, right? And sometimes the snares are not quite as fine as snares from a snare drum. They have a bit more. They're a bit bulkier, and they have more of a rattly kind of a sound on some side drums. So it is a really kind of like a massive deep snare, right? And like if you take the to a certain extent, if you just take the snares off, and it has a really gutsy sound. It's like a super tenor drum, right? Yeah, which some people just consider to be like, well, tenor drum, that's just kind of like a big tom-tom, right? But I don't agree. All right, so continuing on, La Melodia Ben Cantando, right, in our melody parts. And yeah, this is all really gorgeous in here. I really love the way that that this is all scored. I think it's a little fiddly the way that you chopped it up, though. I love the idea of the the kind of the continuous your kind of continuous stream of figuration. But could you possibly give each player a little bit longer to play, like a full half bar, maybe? I just think it would flow a lot better if your second bassoon were playing up to this A, and then first bassoon came in on the same A, right? Or if you really want this drop right in here, then the way to do it would be second bassoon, first bassoon play until the D, and then the second bassoon come in, and so on. I don't know. It's a little difficult. Some of these, to play this and then drop down an octave and come back up. But that's playable, but it's just weird. Sorry about all the clunking upstairs. I think my wife might be doing yoga. Anyway, so yeah, just maybe rather than splitting things up into just one overlapping beat each. Is there a way of doing it a little more smoothly? And I'm also not a huge fan of this. I'm just checking out. Yeah. Here's what it was. I can see this function playing a role in sort of the middle range, but drop down here to the double bass, it just sort of seems like da 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 da. It feels like it's once again pointing to the downbeat a little bit too deliberately, right? I think it sort of takes away from the kind of floating impressionistic character of this passage to a degree. But let's focus on the scoring, right? We've looked at our transcription of the left-hand pattern, and here we see the horns coming in, and this is really lovely the way that he scored this. And then you have the other pair of horns coming in. Yeah, 2 and 4, and then 1 and 3. So I would almost feel better about this being about this being 3 and 4, and then 1 and 2. Do you know what I mean? And then 3 and 4 coming in again, just because like you're asking these players to pair up and play thirds with each other, and so on. And well, this is completely possible, and it's fine, and it's I mean, this is probably what Ravel would do, but I just feel like the partners are a little bit more hip to each other, right? When they're playing sequences of harmonic thirds, right? Or just one right after the other, after the other, after the other. I think the person that is sitting right next to you, who is part of your little sub team, is probably more. You're probably more attuned to each other, right? So I would really give this to like third and fourth, and then first and second, right? And then having third and fourth come back in. And then you can split things off when you get here back to like the natural partners, like third on top and the second and fourth on the bottom. That's kind of how I would handle this. Yeah, and then just get here like the way that the brass start to come in, and right on top of the like some middle voice, some emulation of the pattern. I think works really, really well. And this like the way that the trombones build up to the da 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 da, right? Just this naturally happening right in here is a very trombone like thing. So you come in with it along with your horns. It's really nice setup. Yeah. Alrighty, and clarinets. And this is also very cool right in here. The way that the oboes are kind of getting involved with what the horns are doing an octave higher. Yeah, I mean just really lovely touches right in here. And then like the flutes working in the sixths. With the clarinets, I'm not quite as keen on that, I have to say. Yeah. Yeah, because like once again we're seeing the flute sort of driven lower and lower and lower, right? I just like I just feel it's. I mean, I know it's well intentioned, but like we're starting off at mezzo forte, right? And with all of this doubling, the significance of the second flute being this lower voice in here is pretty much moot, right? I mean, it would be better if you want this kind of combined sound. If you absolutely have to have flute plus clarinet plus first violin, then so be it. But I would make this voice down here English horn plus second clarinet plus second violin. I would do that way before I would throw the second flute right in there, going down to G and so on. I just don't think it really is playing much of a significant role until right in here, right? And this is all more or less fine. I mean, I wouldn't do a voice crossing here though. With I would much rather you had doubled up your second flute here with your first oboe rather than second oboe, right? Because you put the first oboe on top of it and the second flute once again disappears, right? So, just watch out for that. You're just such a fine orchestrator. I'm, I think you can avoid scoring your second flute too low. Yeah, and then so here we're going to more separated parts here. Yes, second flute's still a bit low, right? Compared to, Yeah, try not to do scoring like this, like where you're getting to a forte dynamic and you got a voice crossing where the second flute is under the oboe, right? You're probably looking at this now saying, I knew Thomas was going to yell at me about this. And I did it anyway or something. I don't know. Or maybe you're thinking, well, Thomas is completely wrong. And that's fine too. But I would say, look, if you're pushing your flute down to A and B here, and you've got these pitches here, mezzo forte, and you got these louder pitches in the trumpets here. You got heroic, mezzo heroic French horns in here, and the English horn and so on. It just, what is the second flute doing, right, with its life? You have to ask. They have to ask themselves. All right, so just watch out, please. Please. All right. All right, and then continuing along with this beautiful bassoon writing, English horn coming in, and the cellos supplementing finally, and I feel this is all really lovely in here, and and just a nice way of kind of stripping back from the intensity that we got to here, and just pulling back and pulling back, and just subtracting voices and so on. I think that you could be even doing that from your winds to a certain degree, right? Do you need the clarinets in there? Or we certainly don't need the second flute with the way that this is scored, right? And it's just, maybe just really kind of bringing things back. I do not think you need the trombone right in here. Okay. Or maybe at pianissimo, I don't know. But it just feels like that thickening is a bit too thick. I mean, we're setting this whole section up to be just really, really soft, right? And then bass clarinet, trading off to clarinet, that's as smooth as silk. It's beautiful. Yeah. There was this one weird note. I should have made a note of it. I can't remember now. Okay, so, all right, so, and then this was lovely too. Flute and clarinet, going to this, coming in, the flute coming in, and then ending up with this harmony here. That was just so gorgeous. Such a great idea. And and then here you're like really like making sure, play the roll on the beat. You could actually kind of even say that, roll on beat if you wanted to. Yeah, but lovely color in there. Bassoon trading off to oboe very naturally, and then once again bringing in the flute to sort of kind of moderate the tone and everything else. I see now here's some great second flute scoring, and I feel that this works pretty good. I think, I kind of think that, I kind of think this could all be first flute right in here, this other part. But I mean, what you scored there is completely fine. It's very, kind of nice post-romantic way of bridging between things and making sure everybody has a breath. And and this is some great low flute scoring right in here. The one question I would have is like, what happened to the all the stuff down here at the end of the B section, right? You have those, happening in the left hand. I'm wondering if it got left out on purpose, or maybe like you spaced it out. And if you spaced it out, that's cool. And if you left that out on purpose, that's also fine. It's kind of an interesting variation to what we had before. But I still sort of feel the absence of something. Harp could be playing it. Cellos could be playing it pizzicato. I mean, there's so many different options. Just don't give us anything on the downbeat here. Let things wander. And if your intention was to just let the flute wander without any kind of distraction, then that is great. All right, so now we have the calm surface over the restless undercurrent, right? Vibraphone with a motor off, and pizzicato, and that all works really great. It's just a really great register for the vibraphone, and a nice for it to be playing 2 octaves higher than your pizzicato strings, and it's very simple scoring, and it's kind of nice to have a sort of a relief of just a really basic approach after so much complex stuff happening and so many calculations and so on coming before. And yeah, and of course, just really nice to have this clarinet up here and the just really I just feel this works really beautifully. The overlapping of the functions right in here. It's really just really gorgeous. Yeah. And you pretty much stick to that approach, and then flutes come in. Yep. So yeah, and right in here, I just wondered, if you need this, piano crescendo, maybe you could start off at pianissimo. Or it could just be the sound set that you're using has a somewhat dominating timpani sound, just because maybe there was a concern that the timpani sound had to be strong because there would be a lot of people doing film scoring and you kind of wanting to get that epic sound. But it just really feels a bit unnatural coming in here. I almost feel it should come in just so subtly that it's felt more than it's heard. And by the time it's heard, it isn't taken to be an unnatural part of the soundscape. Yeah, but this is all really lovely in here. It's really great stuff. And that takes us right back to the beginning of D. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about this when just given an hour to talk about it. So I just want to thank you so much once again, Adrian, for all the work you put into this, and just for your prominence in the community has been very much appreciated. Kind comments you have made about other people's work, and your participation in in some of our score evaluations, some of our live evaluations on Patreon, and and helping me to help out those musicians who really do kind of not know where the next day is coming from. And I just I really do worry about them and think about them, and I've got friends out there who are under the gun or in exile, right? So what we did to help them, I really thank everybody out there, Adrian, you, and the Patreon supporters, and just people who spread the word, who might not have been able to contribute as a Patreon supporter, but made a donation of their own, or just like let other people know, and that really means a lot. And and also thanks to the website subscribers, just and everybody out there viewing these, making comments. And speaking of which, you know what to say. You probably have already started to type, or maybe like after you listened to the mock-up. I'm noticing a lot of people will listen to the mock-up and then they'll say some things, and they'll say things like, I don't know if Thomas has mentioned this yet or not, which kind of is a giveaway that they haven't made it to this point in the video yet, but that's totally fine. Yeah, so thanks so much to all of you. Just I'm kind of drunk on a gratitude high here, going towards the end of this year. Well, wow, it was just such a tough year. Maybe I'll have a chance to talk to you guys about it. I am going to be planning a finale event, but it's just going to be too close to, like, when all of this wraps, it's going to be too close to the holidays. So I think I'll wait until after the holidays. Just go take 3 weeks off of hiking and clearing my mind and not doing any work and not worrying too much about anything. And then when I come back, I'll be really refreshed, and it'll be the beginning of the year, and we can get together and talk about all this, and have a sort of a bit of a post-challenge kind of a chat. And I'll see if I can get some special guests to join us. So thanks everybody. I'm signing out for now, but there will be more fun stuff coming later today.